the Soundbar Tower of Power. Hello YouTube, just having a little fun there. Because before you have three different sound bars that are in relatively the same price point. We're going to go over more of that as the video goes on, but actually we're going to look at 4 different sound bars today. You'll find out in just a little bit where that 4th sound bar is. The clever amongst you will know where it is. So basically what I'm going to do for today's video is compare and contrast 4 different sound bars that I have been testing over the past 3 or 4 weeks. And the purpose of that was to figure out what is the best solution for my dad's setup, because he is in need of a new soundbar. His Vizio 2.1 soundbar is getting a little bit outdated. We are looking for something that will work with ARC. So one of these soundbars will end up being a Christmas gift for my dad. The assignment for me over the past 3 weeks has been to analyze these soundbars for features, functionality, and sound quality. In this video, I'm going to give you a recap of what I have found testing all 4 of them. So to begin, I want to talk about what these sound bars have in common. Now, all 4 of them come under the $300 price point. The Sonos is the one on top here. It is the most expensive at $280. And then you have the Samsung that is $250. You have the JBL, which I don't have with me anymore, that is $230. And finally, the Bose here is the cheapest at $200. All 4 of these soundbars will be controlled by your TV's remote. 3 of them use ARC, and the Sonos is just able to learn your TV's IR codes and work with it. And that probably makes it the soundbar that is compatible with the widest range of TVs, because it will basically work with anything. As long as the TV has an optical connection, you don't have to have an ARC port on your TV. So if you got an old TV that doesn't have ARC on it, and there are still a lot of them out there, it may be the best solution for you. Now the Samsung, the JBL, and the Bose, all 3 include a remote, while the Sonos here does not, because it is app controlled and then it just works with a TV remote. Also, the Samsung, the JBL, and the Bose all have Bluetooth. And finally, only the Samsung and the JBL have an external sub. So now I want to talk about some differences that are unique to each of these sound bars. I'm going to start with the Samsung that you see right here. Now this is the longest speaker bar of the pack, and it measures just over 40 inches wide. So it's going to be best with a TV probably 50 inches and above. Also, it is the only one that is a 3.1 soundbar, meaning that there actually is a left, a center, and a right channel speaker built into the soundbar, and it can actually decode Dolby Digital, Atmos, and all those different formats. It is going to downmix them to a 3.1 format, but it can decode them. And so when I was testing, I set my TV to pass through rather than stereo PCM output, and it worked just fine. On all other 3, I had to set it to stereo PCM pass through, or I would lose audio with multi-channel formats that went beyond stereo. Now the Samsung is not the only one with some DSP processing, but it has the most. It has adaptive, it has voice enhance, it has movie mode, it has game mode, it has a night mode, as well as a surround mode that just kind of makes things sound a little bit bigger. A lot of times I don't like those faux surround modes. It did help it sound like the audio soundstage was a little bit larger and coming from without the speaker. Also, the Samsung has the most channel level adjustments. You can actually adjust the center channel level. I believe it's 20 points of adjustment, going as low as -10 and as high as +10. Actually, that might be 21 because 0 is a point in there as well. The sub offers the same level of adjustment. These are a couple of nice standout features for the Samsung. Next, I'm going to talk about the JBL Bar 2.1. It is actually not here. Find out more about that later. Now, it is the second largest at 38 inches, which would look good probably with, again, a 50-inch TV and larger. The Samsung is almost too big for a 50-inch TV. It's almost as long as a 55-inch TV, but not quite. Now, the JBL has no DSP modes to speak of. Also, although it does include a sub, you only have 3 levels of adjustment on the sub: low, medium, and high. Kind of wish there was more, but they're not. Next, I want to talk about the black one in the middle here. That is the Bose TV speaker, as they call it. And it is basically 22 inches in length. Again, I said there's no sub that is included with this one. It does have a remote. It doesn't have a lot of extra features. It does have that voice enhanced feature, which I often find those things to be annoying. But if you're someone who needs that, maybe your hearing is not the greatest, it is helpful. So it is included on the Bose here. Finally, we have the Sonos Ray. Now, the Sonos Ray is the smallest one at just over 22 inches in length. So if you got a tight space, it might be a great option for you. Now, the Ray is actually app controlled. You will download Sonos's app and you will set it up and control the speaker with the app. And it does not include a remote because you can just use your TV's remote to control volume and mute functions on the Ray. The Ray does not include a sub, as I said, but Sonos will sell you one if you're willing to pay over $400, which is almost twice as much as what this speaker cost. It also, the Ray is the most expensive speaker in this bunch, but I think you're paying the Sonos premium just like you would be with that sub. So, I mean, you can get it, but it seems kind of ridiculous to pay almost twice as much for a sub than you paid for the speaker. Now, the Ray does have some DSP functionality. First of all, it has a night mode, which is going to be compression, keeping the loudest sounds from being too loud and the quietest from being too quiet. It also has a voice enhanced mode. The Ray also has some basic EQ settings for bass and treble, as well as a loudness mode. I did not like the loudness mode. I thought it should have been called distortion mode, so I just kept that off. Also, the Ray has a lot of nice built-in streaming features. You can use it with Spotify, Pandora, Deezer, Tidal. Some of these very popular streaming services are able to be used either via the app or some can be used externally, but most of them you will just run through the app and you can add in your services there and stream them to the Ray Soundbar. I only tested AirPlay because that's the only service that I had. Once I set up the speaker and got it on my network, AirPlay worked flawlessly. Also, the Sonos has TruePlay room correction built into it. Now, I'm not sure how fantastic of a room correction it is, more about that later, but it is there. You use your phone's microphone for the soundbar to determine the acoustics of your room. It'll play some beeps and buzzes and funny tones as you go through that, and you have to wave it up and down. It's quite the process. However, it is the only one that includes some type of room correction. And finally, the Sonos, in this bunch of soundbars, is the only one that is available in white. So if that's something that you would like, if that would fit your aesthetics better, you're going to have to go with the Sonos. Next, I want to just kind of talk about my findings and some comparisons between all four of these soundbars. So to begin with, all four of them sound better than any TV speaker I have ever heard. Now, I've heard that Sony and Samsung and even TCL have some great sounding TV speakers that are built in, but I've never heard them. So for the ones that I have heard, they just do not compare to all four of these sound bars. Also, all four of them easily connected to my Sharp TV, and I was able to use its remote, the Roku remote, to control mute and volume on these sound bars. As I said before, the JBL, the Samsung, and the Bose did it through ARC, while the Sonos learned the IR commands from my remote and worked just the same. Now, just if I were to be honest, I was not overly impressed with any of these sound bars. I did not feel that they would rival a traditional home theater setup with separate receiver, speakers, and subwoofer. I think soundbars are getting better, but they're still not as good as having a traditional surround sound system. But also you have to keep in mind is that we're talking about sub $300 soundbars. I know that there are better ones out there from the likes of Samsung, Sony, Sennheiser, Nakamichi, even these brands all make better sound bars. But I was looking for an affordable sound bar because my dad, although he wants to be able to hear his TV audio, he's not super into it. Personally, I would probably say the only one I would be okay using is the Samsung. It is going to get my stamp of approval. I like that it has a center channel. I like that you can adjust the level of the center channel and the subwoofer and dial that in. It also has some good processing built into it. Overall, I really do like that soundbar, even though I still don't think it's as good as having a traditional surround sound setup. I would say that the JBL has the best bass. It has the biggest subwoofer. Also, I'd say the JBL sounds the best with music, Part of that is probably the sub. I just thought that the vocals and music sounded clearer and the music sounded a little more natural. The Samsung was pretty good as well. It was very close between the Samsung and the JBL. You know, make of that what you will, but I preferred the sound of the JBL for music. And I preferred the sound of the Samsung for movies. However, I do wish that the JBL had more control over the bass level. Like I said, you only get low, medium, and high, whereas you get 21 different points of adjustment with the Samsung. And I felt like I would like it to go just a little bit lower than that lowest setting, especially for my dad. For myself, it was fine, but it still was a little bit too high, especially if you're listening at night, you know, and want to keep it down. So that was a knock on the JBL Bar 2.1 for sure. Now, to me, both the Bose and the Sonos sounded kind of boxy and lifeless. Although they did have some clarity to them, they just didn't sound as big as the other two. Now, of course, the actual speaker bars were not as big, so you should expect that. And I just wasn't a big fan of their sound. And actually, I'd probably say my least favorite is the Bose. As they say, no highs, no lows, must be Bose. And that rang true for the TV speaker here. I can't speak to their more expensive products, but the TV speaker was just kind of meh for me. Better than built-in TV speakers, but not as good as some of these other choices that only cost a little bit more. Now, as far as the Sonos is concerned, adding in that Sonos sub might help improve the sound of it. It certainly would give it more bass. And then if you were to do that, I probably could give it a better recommendation, but now you're looking at an almost $700 speaker system, 2.1 speaker system nonetheless. I really think Sonos needs to make a cheaper sub to match this Ray. I think if they did it, they made a nice little 8-inch sub, maybe wouldn't have to look quite as fancy as their subs, but just look nice and match the Ray. That would be an awesome addition, but it's not available, so it's something to think about if you want to add more bass to your Ray. Also, I do think that running the TruePlay room correction setup did improve the sound a little bit, and what it did was basically give more space to the soundstage. That's the only improvement I noticed. There may have been a little bit more bass, but it's really hard to say. I mean, it's difficult to A/B something like that, and so I just had to kind of remember what I heard before and after, and yeah, I think it did help improve it a little, but it still wasn't enough for me to say, this is an awesome soundbar, and you should run out and buy it at $280. So now I want to give you some of my recommendations when it comes to these 4 soundbar choices. First of all, if you are in the Sonos ecosystem, you already have their speakers, and you want a compact soundbar for a smaller room, say a bedroom or a guest room, it's not a bad choice. It really isn't. It sounded better than the Bose, and it has some great features that are part of that Sonos ecosystem, so it really isn't a bad choice. Also, it's the only one available in white, so if that matches your room decor better, it's the one you're going to have to get anyway. Now, if you're going to use a soundbar for some music listening, I would go with the JBL. It's not going to be bad for movies either, but it is the best of the bunch for music when it comes to these 4. Now, if you want something that is a little bit closer to the home theater experience with a dedicated center channel, some level adjustments, and some sound processing, the Samsung is going to be your choice. And at $250, it really is not a bad choice. I really can't recommend this Samsung soundbar at its price point highly enough. If I was going to pick out of the bunch, it would be my choice. The Samsung is just a bit too big for your space. Say you've got a 43-inch TV, the JBL really is not a bad choice, and it is nearly neck and neck with the Samsung. If you're more into music, then it might be the right choice for you. Finally, I would stay away from the Bose. I know it's the cheapest one of the bunch, and I know Bose does have some products with good sound, nice features. The TV speaker is just not one of them. I really can't give any type of recommendation for that one at all. I warn you to stay away from it. Finally, what one am I going to give to my dad? Well, I decided to go with the JBL Bar 2.1. Actually, it's the Bar 2.1 Mark II, which is why it's not here, because I've already given it to him as his Christmas present. We had Christmas earlier. That's why it's not here. I just felt that given its size and feature set and sound quality, it was the best choice for him. So have you heard any of these sound bars? What do you think of them? Do you agree or disagree with my findings here? I thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this kind of content, please be sure to subscribe. Also, check out my Patreon and buy me a cup of coffee. Links down in the description. And remember, frugal doesn't necessarily mean cheap.